So if I had to summarize Dragon Prince in my own words, it's basically about a group of kids trying to bring peace to the world. And then for some reason, there's this old bitter man trying to stop it because he wants power. Anyway, within the group of kids, there's two humans, Ez and Callum, and then we have an elf named Rayla. Now this is obviously not going to be an easy task. I mean, they're kids, and people usually don't listen to kids, so they already have that working against them. However, they do have one thing that can kind of tip the odds in their favor, and that's the dragon egg. But will that be enough to stop a war that's been going on for years and years? Well, let's find out. So earlier I mentioned that there's a war going on, and unfortunately, I hate to say it, but it's the humans that caused it. And I say that because before they messed everything up, everything was one land and everything was united. And this land, before the humans went and messed everything up, was known as Zadia. At least I think that's how you pronounce it. But anyway, by introducing this dark magic, which is a new magic discovered outside of the 6 primal sources of magic, this caused problems. So what exactly are primal stones, and how do they work, and why are they so important? Primal stones are the original and purest forms of magical energy, and there happens to be 6 of them. You have the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the ocean, and the sky. And basically these primal stones are necessary for a mage to cast a spell. Ironically enough, the primal stones are very rare, and probably for good reason. Usually things that are rare or forbidden happen to be that way to prevent it from falling in the wrong hands. But taking a few steps back to where we were talking about dark magic was considered a 7th source of magic, and this worked by using the essence of magical creatures themselves instead of stones. Now, to put it simply, the elves and the dragons weren't on board with this at all, and this led to the humans being shunned in a sense, pushed to the very far west by the elves and the dragons. So the land of the Zadia continent was no longer one, but it was divided into 2. So basically, the aftermath was that the east belonged to the magical lands of Zadia, while the west belonged to the human kingdoms. Meanwhile, the king of dragons, aka Thunder, was defending the border, but then the human kingdoms made things worse by snuffing out the king of dragons using the very thing they were shunned for, which is dark magic, and it was believed that the humans destroyed his only egg, the Dragon Prince. All in all, that's why things are kinda on edge. And I mean, I can kind of get where the elves are coming from, and I'm on their side. Everything was fine and dandy until the humans messed it up, and then the elves go and they shun you for that, but then you make things worse by snuffing out the king of dragons and snuffing out the Dragon Prince. At that point, I'd be through with them too. But here's the game changer. They end up finding a dragon egg in episode 3, and this is where we end up meeting Rayla, who's a moon shadow elf. I guess she's trying to prove herself and ends up sneaking into the castle, but she ends up meeting Ezrin and Callum instead. These kids quickly find out that the Dragon Prince is alive and well, but stopping a war that's been going on for years isn't going to be easy. And we see this with Viren, who is a pretty suspicious character. For one, why did Viren take the dragon egg and keep it hidden, allowing a war to go on? Secondly, why did Viren stop Callum from going to King Harold? Callum and Ez wanted to stop the war, but Viren wouldn't allow Callum to enter the king's quarters. Third, why did Viren lie at the king's funeral and say that the king saw him as a brother? That was definitely not what their last conversation was about. I literally had a bunch of questions, but I figured they'd be answered soon enough. I mean, this is only the first season. But anyway, after the failed attempt to make things right and trying to turn to an adult about the dragon egg, they decide to go on a journey. Callum becomes curious about magic. Rayla then informs him about the primal stones and how they're original and purest forms of magical energy and how there's 6 of them and so forth. Skipping forward a bit to episode 5, things get a little juicy when Amaya, Callum and Ez's maternal aunt, confronts Viren, and at this point, I can definitely tell Viren is up to no good. Especially seeing as he has dark magic. I mean, why would anyone want to get involved with anything called dark magic? It just sounds evil, and that's definitely a red flag. Just like Amaya thought, I'm pretty sure Viren just wanted King Haro out of the way so that Viren can become king himself. I mean, Viren didn't even do the grieving ceremony properly. Viren rushed through the ceremony for the late King Haro, using the current war as an excuse, and Viren looked heavily disappointed when he found out that Ez and Callum were still alive after he tried to get rid of them that night that Rayla snuck into the castle. And that was back in episode 3, where we had a lot of things going on, not just with Rayla sneaking into the castle, but we lost King Harold that same night as well. All in all, Viren could have potentially stopped this if he would have just let Es and Callum show King Harold the egg. Who knows what could have happened? King Harold could have possibly been alive, but because we know that Viren stopped it, we know that he has bad intentions. Not to mention there's further evidence against Viren, because not only did Viren manipulate General Amaya into going back to where the borders were and taking her off the rescue mission, but he also took Grin, her commander, off the rescue mission for the princess as well, the second Amaya left. Instead of allowing Grin to lead the search like Amaya wanted, Viren put his son Soren over the mission instead, just as he initially wanted. Then, to make matters worse, Viren shows his true colors once again when he summoned his son Soren and tell him to return with terrible news about the princess. Basically, Viren wants Soren to lie and say that the princess had been snuffed out. This means that General Amaya was right on the head about Viren the whole time. Viren's scheming, and I don't think anything good is going to come of it. He even encourages his son to snuff out the princess himself, dismissing it by saying, oh, accidents happen in the wild basically, which is BS. The truth of the matter is that I severely underestimated Viren. I can see his concern about children being king, but that doesn't mean they can't learn or be taught. Furthermore, that doesn't mean that they should be snuffed out just because they may not have all of the necessary skills to be king yet. I mean, I wouldn't necessarily want to listen to a kid either, and I wouldn't want a kid to have that much power over my life and my livelihood. That'd be a bit concerning, but he's definitely going about it the wrong way. Meanwhile, you have Rayla, Es, and Callum to try and stop this war. They're going on this journey, trying to find a miracle healer, all these things that they're trying to do to protect the egg, and Viren's just trying his best just to become king. It doesn't really seem like he cares about others. I feel like the only thing that's going through his head right now is how it's his chance and only opportunity to become king. Like he must have been power hungry this whole time. So I wonder how he truly felt about King Harold. Was he just close to him and waiting for this moment to happen? I mean, that's how it's coming off, and I can't think of any other way to explain it. One thing I know for sure is that Viren definitely does not need to be in power. He definitely does not need to hold this position. I feel like things are going to get worse, especially because he wants to keep the people in war. What do you gain from that? So if you couldn't tell, I definitely don't like Viren. Viren is evil, he's up to no good, and he has bad intentions. He's only thinking about himself, and I don't like characters like that. Season 1 ended with Viren being aware of the kid's location, so I wonder where he's gonna go from here. I also can't help but wonder how he's gonna be stopped. There's 2 more seasons, I think, so clearly something happens or it gets worse. Either way, something is going down. I mean, the kids did a lot of aimless running around in this season, so maybe within the next season they'll get the results that they're looking for. Anyway, how did you feel about season 1? How do you feel about Viren? And do you think the kids will make it out of this untouched? Leave a comment down below with any thoughts or questions. Thank you for tuning in. Sierra Nova is out.